Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Skybound Volume 1 review. Now, this will be different than like the others, because I'm not going to be having the dub in this, because I already released the movie, but hey, here's the review of Volume 1. So, there's going to be two sections of this video. There's going to be the review on each issue, and then at the end, we'll do the total review of the volume, going over, rating it. And then the second part is going to be reviewing the characters and giving my foretake on what I feel about the characters. So I guess first off we should do issue 1. Now issue 1, I gave it a 10 out of 10, and while I still think that does stick, I don't think it's quite a 10 out of 10. It's like a 9 point, probably like 8 or 7. But I'm going to stick with the 10 out of 10 I gave it, because either way, it could go either way. But, what did I think of the issue, overall? It's a really good first starter. We get our interactions with the humans at first, before we get into the robots. Then the first one we see is Jetfire, and we see him reactivating the bots and cons by accident. Starscream killing Bumblebee, of course, which is a really big effect on the series overall. I mean, it is Bumblebee after all, so it's going to be a big effect. And then we see the Autobots and cons start awakening, but not too many wake up, because then Prime destroys Teletran, which results in us having to slowly but surely build the cast up, with them slowly reviving everyone. And then it ends with Jetfire's quote unquote death. We'll get into that in the next dub. Well, the next two dubs, and then Starscream killing Dave and attacking the humans. Now, yeah, that's pretty much it that happens in the issue, a gist of it, and it was really good, honestly. It is a great starter. The only flaw I kind of have with it is that, let's think, is there a flaw I have? I'd say maybe the only flaw I have is that and this is something that the comic hasn't shown, it's the full extent of the ARC crew. I kind of wish the comic had shown us all the characters that were on the ARC, or at the very least gave us a better description, because in issue 1 and all the way up until issue 5, from what it looks like it's going to G1 accuracy with the characters on board. But then as the series goes on, we see characters that should have been on the ARC if they're following the original, like Blue Streak, are on Cybertron, while characters like RC are on Earth, that were aboard the ARC, along with the aerial bots. But I kind of wish that the crew was consistent, because I think it would, if they were going with the original season 1 route of season 1 of G1, then that would be cool. It would be a cool way, but I do like the addition of other characters that weren't in season 1 of G1. But yeah, I think a 10 out of 10 still works for the review rating. Now, issue 2, I gave it a 7 out of 10, and I still think that holds up. It is a good issue, trust me. It's just, to me, it's probably the worst issue of Volume 1. It just feels like there's just some things I didn't like about it. Mainly, I'm not a fan of G.I. Joe, so, Duke from G.I. Joe having a cameo in this didn't really do much for me at all. But yeah, anyways, the issue it starts with, the Optimus and the deer scene, and then him explaining everything to Spike, and then we see Cliffjumper is reactivated, which is, since Bumblebee's not around, we gotta have Cliffjumper here. And then we get our explanation about Ratchet having to revive the bots slowly without Teletran. And then, and the bots and cons need Energon, in which the Decepticons attack the power plant that Starscream attacked at the end of the first issue. And then Sparky, he eventually gets away, and he gets back home. During that, also the G.I. Joe, cameo, from Duke, with Starscream fighting the jet happens, Starscream kills another guy and then flies away. But yeah, Sparky, he heads back to his home. He gets his weapons. While that's happening, Optimus and Spike head to the power plant to take down the cons. And Carly returns home, being followed by Laserbeak, where she meets Sparky, and Sparky tells her about what happened to her dad. And yeah, that's how it ends. Now, like I said, the G.I. Joe thing is just, it's something I'm not really too fond of. Now, they do some cool stuff, like how, as of right now, there's a spoilers for the current run, that Hound is actually with the G.I. Joe right now, and he was aboard the Ark. So it's cool that we got Hound a part of them, and hopefully he will cross over with the main gang of the current run, because Hound would be a cool member to have a part of the bots. But yeah, issue 2, it's pretty okay. Like, it's just not my favorite. Now, issue 3, I gave it a 9 out of 10, and it still holds up. It's a really good issue. Like I said, issue 1 may have the 10 out of 10, but it's not my favorite issue of the entire volume. But my favorite issue still has its flaws, and that issue is probably either this or the next issue. It's a tie between issue 3 and 4. But yeah, issue 3, it starts with, like, Prime, or not Prime, wait. No, it starts with Carly and Sparky, then they get attacked by Laserbeak. Cliffjumper saves them. But Sparky, believing all the Transformers are evil, shoots him and they drive off. Then we get Starscream and Soundwave, where we get our second Megatron reference, because, well, Megatron's been gone the entire time. And Starscream doesn't like it when anybody mentions him, for probably obvious reasons, if you know what happened. Check out the 2024 Energon Universe dub I made, which I will not be reviewing here, but I will review that in Volume 2. But yeah, then they find out that they find where Cliffjumper is, so Skywarp is sent in to deal with him. Then we get Sparky and the humans meeting up. Cliffjumper tries to talk to them again, but he gets shot at. Then Skywarp makes an attack, and Prime arrives, and Prime and Skywarp have their fight. During it, the humans attack Optimus, still believing that all of them are enemies, even though they clearly could see them fighting each other, but well. And then Sparky orders them to keep firing on both of them, and Spike gets shot, and then Prime, in a fit of rage, rips his arm off and beats Skywarp to a point he can't fight. And then him and Sparky drive off to the hospital, and that's how the issue ends. It's actually a pretty short issue without that much dialogue, since a lot of it is just action. Now, this issue was really good. Obviously, the best part is Optimus ripping his arm off, because, well, we all know what happens next issue. But, I can't really think of any flaws with this issue. Maybe the closest was just the humans. Like, I get why they would think that they're all evil, but come on, you can clearly see them fighting each other. At the very least, you should let one of them finish the other off before you try to kill them, Like, come on, Prime is clearly not attacking anyone, so why not, finish off the one that's actively killing people? Like, I don't know. That's really it, but that's always my opinion when Inhumans and Transformers stuff, when they attack the bots. Like, it's not that hard to deduce one side is better than the other, especially when Carly told Spike about there being good ones, and he still doesn't believe her. But yeah, the issue was really good. Issue 4. Now, I gave issue 4 a 9 out of 10, and it still holds up. It's still really good. Now, this issue follows, like, Prime, being chased by Starscream because Starscream found Skywarp. Ratchet has to stop working on Wheeljack to revive a different bot to give Prime backup. But Cliffjumper saves Prime, and they arrive at the hospital, but get jumped by the cons, while Spike is put into the emergency room. However, the cons take out the power, but before they can finish off the humans and Prime / Griff, Ratchet, along with the newly reactivated Jazz, arrives. They beat up the cons, and they force them to go back and put them on the defensive. And then we see Prime use the Matrix to save Spike in the hospital. Then Starscream and Soundwave return, but realize that they need Cybertronium material to finally fix Teletran, so they rip Skywarp apart and temporarily kill him, kind of. Then we see Prime and Sparky talk, and then Ratchet arguing with Prime about using the Matrix. We see that Jazz goes offline because they could only bring him on for a few, hours. But then Ratchet says that they have one way to get Prime back in the initiative, which is, well, of course, the Megatron fusion cannon arm. And Sparky says he can help them get power. We see Cliff and Carly talk about what Starscream. And then we see the iconic, how do you feel about going on the offensive from Prime? And then it ends with Starscream using the new Skywarp Teletrend to start reactivating the cons and saying how he will be Decepticon leader. And at the very end, we see a teaser to Megatron with him frozen in the ice. Now, honestly, this issue was just great, honestly. I can't really think of any problems I have with the issue. It was actually really good. It's nice to see Jazz online. Nice that we're getting more of the Season 1 bots. Even though he would be the last Season 1 bot that we see join the group, the Autobots, this volume, but that's fine. But, yeah, pretty much all was good. Of course, the iconic, how do you feel about going the offensive? To me, the second best scene of the comics. Besides one other, but we'll get to that in not for a while. But, yeah, it was honestly pretty good. The rating still works. But, like I said, I can't think of any problems. So, this might be almost the perfect issue. And honestly, I think I might change the rating of this one to a 10 out of 10. It was actually really good. Now, on to issue 5. I gave it an 8.6. And I probably would actually bump it up by, like, probably to a 8, probably, actually. It was a lot better than I was giving it. It's actually almost on par with the last 2 issues. Now, obviously, the issue starts off with some flashbacks to the war and Sparky's war as well, where we see him in prime parallels with each other. Then we get them talking about the war. Then we get back to the arc and see Thundercracker, Reflector, and Frenzy revive. Starscream kicks Ravage. We'll get into that in 2 issues. And they find out that the bots are planning to use the power plant to get energy, so they head after them. There we see that Wheeljack was revived, but unfortunately due to basically no Energon, Ratchet just was only able to revive his upper half without his legs. Which is weird, because when Ratchet was loading all the bots in issue 1, we saw that Wheeljack had at least one of his legs attached, so it's just weird he doesn't have the other one. I think he could have just made like a prosthetic leg, but oh well. But yeah, they build a water turbine, they turn it on, RC is revived, and then Jazz is but a battle begins with the cons, you know. We get some cool action, like Cliff and Jazz working together, RC saving Carly. We see Reflector and Frenzy die, rest in peace. We see Optimus and Starscream have a dialogue about Optimus using the Megatron arm. Starscream destroys the machine temporarily, preventing any more bots from getting revived, but the cons retreat. Optimus decides to go against them and chase after them to finish off the war. So him and everybody but Wheeljack head out there, but they get ambushed by the Constructicons, who have been revealed to have been revived, and the issue ends with them turning into Devastator. Now, this issue was pretty good, although there are some questions and things that are a bit weird. Obviously, the Wheeljack thing, and, also, the Constructicons. Did Starscream, reactivate them before they went out after the bots? Or were they reactivated before, but just left behind to secure the Ark? I'm personally gonna go with they were revived beforehand, since they aren't able to fly. So it would make sense that out of all the cons, they would be the ones left behind, because they can't fly, unlike the others. So it made sense to keep them behind, especially since they can't combine into Devastator to defend the Ark. And it would have also been kind of nice if we got to see again more of the Autobots that are on the Ark crew. It would have been cool if we saw, and it was also kind of weird that the bots didn't have their injured closer to the machine, from what Optimus described it sounded like they were down the hill a little bit, which is weird. You would think that they would have them pretty close, so as soon as the machine is done, they could just, chop, plop them in, and revive them. But I guess we had to have some way to keep the bots from just getting their numbers built up. And we also got to see Trailbreaker as the bot that was going to be reactivated next, and we're going to have to wait a while before he gets reactivated. Although he was mixed-colored to Beachcomber, but hey, animations happen. But yeah, other than that, the issue was really good. It was just those lingering questions. But so I'd say, 8.8 is definitely the rating I'd give it. Now, on to issue 6, / the finale to the volume. I gave it a 9.7, and that's still accurate. It was good, it just felt short, but that could be because a lot of it was action. So we begin with a little Sparky flashback to his son, his other son that died. I forgot to mention that, but oh well, there's a lot of stuff that happens. Then we see the bots running from Devastator. Also, in the ending of the last issue, Ratchet lost his leg to Scavenger. So Optimus is having to drag him, but they're getting attacked by Devastator. Cliffjumper and Carly stay back, and they try to figure out a way to save the others by entering the Ark through a secret passage. Devastator wipes the floor with Prime and injures him bad enough that the bots are barely able to retreat, with Ratchet losing his other leg. Then we get Starscream and Carly meeting again, where Cliffjumper faces him off. Then we see Optimus in a very 86 movie style, looking like he's about to die. But after ejecting the Matrix, Sparky, in an act of heroism, sacrifices himself to repower Prime with the Matrix. Then Prime wipes the floor with Devastator, and then Cliffjumper and Starscream continue fighting. And when Cliffjumper has the advantage and is about to kill Starscream, he hesitates, doesn't kill him, which gives Starscream the opportunity to grab Carly. Then we cut back to Prime and Devastator, who are going up the hill, and Optimus uses the momentum to carry and throw Devastator down the hill, who lands on Starscream, causing Cliff to be able to grab Carly, but Carly isn't so happy about him sparing Starscream. Then we see the Constructicons carry Starscream to safety, and the issue ends with Optimus going to Soundwave and asking if they could rebuild their home together, find a way to save it. But Soundwave doesn't take the deal, and so him and the rest of the cons retreat until they meet again. And the finale of the volume ends with Spike in the hospital asking where his dad is. So overall, it was a good issue and a good finale. There leaves some questions open and some questions closed, and things to come, especially a lot of things are to come. Now, what my favorite moment definitely was, the Prime v Devastator, since obviously, if you look at the comic art, it's clearly hinting at You Got the Touch playing over it, because, come on, what other song would they be talking about? Come on, the G1 intro? Probably not. And then we got Carly and Starscream and Cliffjumper, which was good in this issue, but I was gonna say something, but I'm gonna save it for Volume 2's review, because I'll go more in depth on how I feel about Carly's character in Volume 2, which, to be honest, for the first couple issues, I did not like. I did not like her, really. But we'll get to that. Yeah, some other stuff like Sparky's sacrifice was pretty sad, but also call back to about Optimus saving the hospital 2 issues ago, and showing that Optimus's kindness does pay off in the end. No matter how much pain they go through, it will pay off in the end, even in their darkest moments. Which is nice, given there's a lot of characters who we're gonna meet who definitely want Prime to focus on their people and don't want him to care about the humans, i.e. Ratchet and Alita. But as we see, they are proven wrong by Prime's care for the humans, ultimately benefiting the Autobots a lot more than harming them. But yeah, that's pretty much Volume 1. If I had to rate the issues, this would be my rating for them. Yep, this would be my ranking of them, And then I'll do a ranking for each, and then I'll eventually, once I get more volumes done, I'll start ranking the volumes overall, how I feel about them. But yeah, the Volume 1 was actually really good. If I had to, in total, I'd give it probably a 9.5 out of 10 for a volume. It was really good. Now, it's not quite as good as, future volumes. I will admit that there is one volume that we're coming up soon. No, not Volume 2. Volume 3, actually, that I think so far might be my favorite volume. / the best volume of the comics so far. But we'll see with future volumes. That might change, and I probably will. Now, let's get on to the second section, where I'm going to talk about the characters and how I feel about them and their arcs throughout Volume 1. Now, first, let's start off with Spike. Now, Spike early on in the volume was pretty important. He was involved in a lot of stuff. But as the volume went on and then he went into his coma, he stayed out of it. But for what he did, he was pretty good, honestly. Like, him wanting to be an astronaut at first, and then he meets the Autobots. He rescues Prime by saving him from getting killed by Ravage, along with Carly. And then him and Prime have their talk in issue 2, which was pretty cool. And then in issue 3, he gets shot, and for the rest of it, it's in a coma. So, yeah, he doesn't do much, but hey, in Volume 2, he gets a bit more. And then there's Sparky. Now, Sparky is definitely, I consider, the main human of Volume 1 because of all the stuff he goes through. Like, first we see him in his drunken state. You know, he's not doing too well since the death of his oldest son, Jimmy, happened recently. And then we see him at the end of the volume when he's at the power plant losing it at Dave, who's trying to comfort him and tell him he has to be there for Spike. And then until issue 3's ending, he believes all the Transformers are evil and so tries to hunt them down with the town. But once he sees Optimus save Spike, he starts to grow attached to them and starts to see a bit of himself in Prime. And Prime actually helps him grow past the depression he had ever since the war he was in. Which I'm not sure what war it is. I don't think it's been revealed yet. For some reason, it's giving me heavy Vietnam vibes. So maybe that's what they're hinting at was the war he was in. But probably not. I guess we'll have to wait to see if they tell us. But yeah, and his sacrifice at the end was really good. And he did help the bots also with giving them the turbo bind thing to help them get power, which I'm sure will come back into play at some point later on. But yeah, he was probably the best human in the volume. Also, I will say I do like how they did change his name from G1 because Sparkplug as a human's name doesn't really work. I mean, yeah, Sparky's a bit weird also, but hey, you can find people named Sparky. Nope, and how often are you gonna find someone named Sparkplug? So, hey. At least it made it feel a bit more realistic, since it would be weird to have somebody actually called that. And then there's Davey. Now, Davey doesn't really do much in this. He doesn't do much. He's only in one issue where he actually does something. Like, he does make cameos and his name dropped, but come on. He doesn't really do much in the comics. His definitely really serves to motivate Sparky and Carly's characters, and Starscream's also. And then there's Carly. Now, Carly, the one thing I kind of like about this is that they did a reversal of, G1, where Carly was kind of like a side character, and, she wasn't in too many stories. When in this, you can argue she's, the second main human character, because she's in this a lot more than Spike is. And in some ways, she might be in this more than Sparky, if you think about it, given the amount of screen time she's had. But yeah, I do like her character. I do like this take on her, and I kind of prefer her design here over G1. Sorry, blonde women, sorry. Anyways. But yeah, she's really good. I do like her chemistry with Cliffjumper. Definitely makes her the same with Wiki of this in terms of having an Autobot human partner. Or I guess the Charlie from this. And it is cool that she's the one that got to have Cliffjumper have more screen time also. And yeah, she's really good. Although, as you heard earlier, Volume 2, her character goes down a little bit for me. But overall, past Volume 2, she's still probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite human character in the comic. And then there's Jetfire. Now, Jetfire, like I said, just like Davey, he's only in one issue so far. We'll get to him more in Volume 2, but he doesn't really do much other than revive the Autobots and then Decepticons without him knowing that they're at war. You know, he is kind of the reason Bumblebee's dead, and honestly could be to blame for everything that happened so far, but in reality, there's another character that can be blamed for everything that's happened. We'll get to him in Volume 2, but yeah, Jetfire doesn't really do much. I mean, his death was kind of sad, quote-unquote death, but he just doesn't do much besides, fighting Starscream a little bit and being the reason the bots and cons are reactivated in the first place. But, like I said, when we get to Volume 2, we'll have more to discuss about him. Now, next up is Starscream. Oh, Starscream, what can we say about him? Other than he's my favorite character to dub. I'm just going to be straight up. He's my favorite character to dub. I try my best to do a good performance of Psychopath Starscream.
So pathetic!
Maybe it was always there, hiding.
Hi. We just lost power! Victory! What? You want to start with the smallest ones? Faction! Constructicons! Merge to form
Devastator!
Kill!
Wait, what is a dad? Now, anyways, he does a lot. He's definitely the main villain of Volume 1. I mean, he's the leader of the Decepticons for now, but so it makes sense that he would be, well, of course, the big villain of this volume. And technically, he'll come back later, as we'll see, for another role as a villain. But yeah, this Starscream is very much different than most others. Most others are like, well, he is kind of a coward. I wouldn't say he's as much of a coward as other Starscreams. Like he retreated. Like, the only time he called for retreat was under very understandable circumstances. Like, I'm pretty sure any of the Decepticons should be smart enough to retreat when he did. Like, but like, still, he's like, you know, obviously the biggest difference is that he's a full-out psychopath, whether it be crushing humans, kicking minicons, you know, killing Autobots in their sleep, you know, the usual stuff a psychopathic Starscream would do. And like, he even betrayed his own friend Jetfire when he didn't want him to kill the Autobots. Like, he clearly doesn't care about anyone. He doesn't care about his troops. He doesn't care about humans or Autobots. The only person he seems to care about is himself, which is why he makes not a very good leader for the cons. Like, not a very great leader. But like I said, he's probably he's my favorite. He might be my well, he's definitely my third, at least, favorite character in this volume. Or second, it's a tie. Like, obviously my favorite character is Prime, but we'll get to Prime next. But yeah, Starscream's just, he's really cool, and he's awesome in this, obviously. Psychopathic Starscream will always be cool. That's why he's really cool. And he does a lot that it's hard for me to explain everything he does in detail. But I guess I could mention the bigger things, like, you know, him killing Davey, him being Decepticon leader, him sending Skywarp to fight Prime, which caused Skywarp to get injured. Then him trying to kill destroy the hospital, to kill all the innocent people inside. Then him and Soundwave get pushed back, and then he, with Soundwave, mutilates Skywarp to use him to bring the other cons back. And even then, he doesn't care about them, as he kicks Ravage for even being suggested to get fixed, which is dumb, since that doesn't even make sense, since Frenzy got fixed, so I don't know. And then, like, he fights Prime, is angered by him using the fusion cannon because, well, he's afraid of it, obviously, as we see later on with Megs. And then, he revives Devastator at some point, I don't know when. And he basically just sits at the sidelines, except for when he fights Cliffjumper, and even then he does dirty tactics, like trying to kill Carly in front of him and using her as a human shield, literally. But then he gets his chassis kicked by Devastator landing on him, and he just gets driven away on his green carriage of Constructicons. But yeah, it's pretty good in this volume. Now, next is Optimus, in my opinion, the best character of Volume 1, because of all the stuff he goes through. So, we see him at the very beginning in the slideshow that shows of, like, early scenes, like the arc crashing. And then we see him after Starscream kills Bumblebee, is about to try to kill Jazz, where he fights Starscream, you know, like, he tells him the way he's doing is dishonorable. And so they fight. He meets the humans, you know, Carlin and Spike. And then him and Ratchet team up, and they get the Autobots out of the ship, you know, they retreat. He's sighted by Jetfire, and one thing they keep trying to do throughout the Volume 1 is use the Matrix, whether it be fix Jetfire or revive the other Autobots. Then the scene of the deer he steps on plays, and we see his vulnerable side as he is saddened by it. Then tells Spike about, you know, the story of their people. Is glad to see Cliffjumper, but then once they see the power plants attacked, he immediately charges in alone. Well, with Spike, but basically alone. That's the only fighter in the battle. Then he sees Skywarp fighting the humans and tries and rescues them, but obviously they still think that he's an enemy, so attack him. But despite that, he tries his best to protect them and completely goes crazy once Spike is shot. and kicks Skywarp down to almost basically beating him to a pulp, pretty much, and losing his arm in the process. And they drive off. He fight the cons, and then he even like shows care to the humans, like Sparky and the little sick boy at the hospital. And then, of course, he gets the Megatron fusion cannon arm and, of course, creates the best shot of the entire volume. How do you feel about going on the offensive? And then, we see him at the dam where, instead of getting himself fixed, he wants to bring the other Autobots back, such as RC and Jazz, and tries to bring more, but isn't able to. But then he does show a bit of rash decision by, as soon as the cons are beaten back, instead of trying to fix the machine and get more of their numbers back online, he immediately wants to go and finish the war, which was a terrible idea as they got jumped by the cons, who have rebuilt their forces with Devastator, and he gets beaten up and almost dies, but Sparky, in a heroism, charges the Matrix again, obviously, and Prime beats Devastator. But he still wants to bring everything down to a peaceful revolution by trying to convince Soundwave to join forces, but of course he doesn't. And he respects that, and says that he's no fool, and that they shall meet again. And yeah, Prime's just he's definitely a naive leader. He's not quite the dad that we know in G1, or the psychopath of Bayverse. He's kind of a mix of both. He's definitely a young leader that's trying his best for his family. He basically fits as, in my opinion, the older brother who's trying to step up for his family. He's trying to be there as the comfort and also the father of the family, and trying to bring all of his bots together, but is obviously stressed by everything, whether it be the losses of friends or being unable to just end the war. That's what makes him a really good character, in my opinion. The best character of Volume 1, and probably the comic as a whole. Now, the next character is Ratchet. Ratchet in this volume is very interesting, since him and Prime are a lot of the time on odds. He helps Prime, and he helps them, but obviously him and Prime don't agree on a lot of stuff. Whether it be protecting the humans instead of focusing on their people for their survival. Ratchet does not want the humans, to be killed or something like that, but at the same time, he wants Prime and them to focus on their people, which is understandable because it makes sense. They're the last of their people that they know of fighting anymore, so they need to focus on themselves, and without them and without their protection, the humans will die anyways, so they have to keep themselves safe. And he does go through a lot in this issue. He's trying to bring back friends, and he has to sacrifice other friends. Then he loses his legs at the ending, so he's unable to fully he's unable to keep Prime stable, thus they worry he's gonna die. And then him and Prime are at odds, although he does give, and while in good nature, he does give Optimus the Megatron arm, as it is the only thing that can really give them an advantage. In the long run, as we see, it was probably one of the worst decisions they could have made. Or at the very least, Prime should not have had that fusion cannon arm for as long as he did, as it ended up causing a lot of problems, as we'll see later on. But other than that, Ratchet was actually pretty good, a good side character. Now, next is Skywarp. Skywarp is definitely one of the more sympathetic cons, because yes, he does do his evil share of things, but what he goes through and what he ends up becoming for, as of right now, the current run, is probably a fate that not even he deserved. He starts off, just being there, the Decepticons' second jet support. He's just, the extra muscle they need. And, of course, his crazy teleporting powers are awesome and cool to see in action. But then he gets beaten up by Prime, and he basically becomes unable to function really on, fighting. He can't even stand. And it's made all the worse once the cons bring him back to the Ark, and they realize that since he's basically crippled and isn't going to be much help anyways, they decide to rip him apart in order to use his parts to revive the other Decepticons. And at first, it doesn't even seem like he's alive anymore, because, he's just a part of Teletran now. But then, spoilers for Volume 2, it turns out he's alive still. And so, the pain of him having to sit there every day for the rest of his life, possibly, is not really a fun thing to go through. So, he's definitely the most sympathetic Decepticon of this volume, besides Soundwave and Ravage. Speaking of which, we have Soundwave next. Now, Soundwave is definitely, he's the second big bad of the volume, but he's not quite as he's not quite like a menace as Starscream. He doesn't take joy in ripping Autobots apart. He does, at least from what we've seen. He just wants to get the job done. While Starscream wants to make his enemies suffer. Soundwave just wants to get the job done. He doesn't want to make the process go any longer than it already has to. And then, of course, he cares for his mini-cons. That's when Ravage is put out of commission for the volume. He constantly is trying to get him repaired and fixed and holding on to him like he's his precious child, which he basically is. And then he also cares for his other mini-cons, although they don't show it this volume. But they do show it later on, moments of him caring for his other mini-cons. Although it was weird, he never seems to care about Frenzy dying, which was a bit weird. And, of course, him ripping Skywarp apart was also pretty not good, and shows he doesn't fully care for his cons, as he was the one that suggested ripping Skywarp apart pretty much, or insinuated that they should. But other than that, he is definitely the most redeemable Decepticons possibly here. Even Optimus saw it by trying to come to him and ask for a truce, or at the very least just to work together to save their home. Now, next we have Ravage. Ravage doesn't really do much. He only has a bit of action in issue 1 and then gets put into stasis for the rest of the volume. And for a bit longer going into the next 2 volumes. So he's basically only there to be to show the humanity side of Soundwave by him caring for him and trying to fix him. Now, the next character is Cliffjumper. Definitely the second main Autobot of this volume because he gets a lot of screen time with Carly. Now, when we see him, he doesn't really show too much. You might just think, oh, he's just here because Bumblebee's dead. But then as we go on, we learn more, especially since he's pretty brave for a small guy. And he's got some pretty good feats. He took down Laserbeak, which most bots aren't able to do, surprisingly. But, and then, we learn about him and Starscream's connection with Starscream having killed his entire clan, aka family. Which was pretty sad to hear about, especially since it sounded like he hasn't been well since. And then we see him and Carly start to bond over that, them losing their families from Starscream. But then in the finale, in the final issue, we see him get the chance to kill Starscream and end his reign of terror. But he chooses not to because he's just tired of killing. He's done it, and he's just done with it. Which gives Starscream the chance to almost kill Carly, and then Carly starts to become upset with Cliffjumper, which we will see a lot more of in the next issue. Next is Laserbeak. Laserbeak doesn't do much. He's just a surveillance drone pretty much for Soundwave and the cons. He only has a couple appearances, and his biggest scene was him fighting Cliffjumper briefly, which was cool. And also, the size of him is pretty big. He's big in this series. All the mini-cons they're all the size of Cliffjumper. They should be a bit smaller, at the very least half his size. But no, Laserbeak and Rumble are as big as Cliffjumper. Laserbeak's honestly probably bigger than Cliffjumper almost. Next, we have another human character who shows up a lot more as we go on in the future volumes, and that's Dr. Leo. He doesn't do much, and at first he didn't seem to like the bots either, given the way he looks at Prime when he tells him about the generator being taken out. But he grows to not really, I wouldn't say carefully yet, but come to an understanding that the bots are not the bad guys, that they're here to protect them, as seen later on. But for Volume 1, he doesn't do much other than be Spike's doctor. Then there's Rumble. Rumble, he doesn't really do much. He only has 2 big appearances in this. Him first getting that cheap shot on Cliffjumper, and then Jazz firing back at him the next time we see him when he's trying to get another shot on Cliffjumper. And he does lose his arm, which we don't see. We do see it, but we see it more in the coming volumes. We see him without his one arm, which is pretty cool detail. And then there's Jazz. Jazz doesn't do much in this volume other than his appearance of him helping Ratchet save the bots from the cons in issue 4. And then he goes offline briefly because they had to pull all the Energon just to bring him back. And then the next issue he just comes back to life with the turbine. And he just doesn't really do much as well. I mean, he honestly hasn't really done much at all in the comics, if we're going to be honest. He appears in the background quite often. And it is nice to have Jazz around. He is cool. And just like G1, he's one of the cool characters of the group. Next, we have Thundercracker. Now, Thundercracker doesn't really do too much in Volume 1, as he's only in 2 issues and barely does anything or says anything. But from what we got, he is definitely sympathetic because he cares about Skywarp and has all of his anger towards the Autobots because he believes they, well, killed him and then mutilated him. But then, of course, he learns later on the truth. But Thundercracker, yeah, he doesn't really do much in Volume 1. But hey, he is cool to have around. It is cool to have Thundercracker. When we get the trio, although it would have been cool if we got to see the Seeker trio in action together, but that's fine. He gets more to do in Volume 2, so yeah, he's pretty okay, I guess. Next, we have Frenzy. Frenzy only shows up once. He does nothing, pretty much. He flies at Prime and then gets his face completely destroyed. So, yeah, there's not really much to say. Then we have Reflector, same as Frenzy. He doesn't do much, although this comic kind of made me like Reflector a bit. I don't know, I just kind of like him a bit more, thanks to this comic. But just like Frenzy, he doesn't do much. All he does is get basically disintegrated by the fusion cannon. Then we have Wheeljack. He only shows up in 1 issue, but he did help build the turbine, and it is good to have Wheeljack around. I mean, we gotta at least have Wheeljack and Ratchet work together a little bit. So, Wheeljack was pretty cool. I mean, like I said, he just helps to revive the Autobots. And it is sad that he doesn't have his legs, but hey, it's not like he has to go too much longer without them, so yeah, he's pretty alright. Next, we have RC. RC was pretty good in this. She doesn't really do much either. Again, we're at the latter half characters, so they don't really do too much in the comic from here on out, but she was good. I did like how it kind of feel like we got an animated reference with her and Ratchet being close to each other. Obviously not quite as much as animated. I don't think they're a couple in this, although that would be cool. But yeah, she doesn't really do too much, but hey, it's cool to have RC around, even though she's one of those characters that wasn't in season 1 of the show, so her showing up being on the arc is, well, weird a little bit, but still cool to have her around. Alright, now we have the Constructicons. I'm going to do a lightning round because they don't do much besides to be Devastator. Long Haul, yeah, he doesn't do much in this. He literally, the only two that have lines are Bone Crusher and Scrapper, but we'll get to them. But yeah, Long Haul, just the torso. Hook, just the upper head of Devastator, really. They don't do anything. Scavenger, he's pretty okay. I mean, he's just the arm of Devastator. And then there's Mixmaster, again, doesn't do anything, but oh well. And then there's Bone Crusher. Bone Crusher was pretty cool. Well, he only has 1 line, and it's just him reporting that they should retreat. And then there's Scrapper, who does the same thing by saying that they will carry Starscream away. And then there's Devastator. Devastator was cool to have as the final action of the final issue. His fight was really good, and we do get to see a bit of his character with him not being very happy and trying to destroy the Autobots, obviously. But he doesn't. He does quite a bit, and his fight with Prime was good. And can't wait to see more of him in the coming issues. And then we have Jimmy, who has a cameo appearance in this. He only gets 1 line, basically 1 line. Just Spike's brother, yeah, he doesn't really do much. Although his death did have an effect on both Spike and Sparky, especially with the story. Although he doesn't really get brought up that much past Volume 1. I don't even remember if he got brought up anymore. Although I will say that the him blowing up in the rocket ship to space kind of reminded me of the Challenger space explosion. I don't know if that's what it was supposed to be, given that it seems like the comics take place in the modern day, like 2020 at the least. So I don't know. I doubt Spike would be obviously an adult. If I don't know, honestly. Alright, now the last thing I'll bring up is Bumblebee, because he doesn't have a character in this, but his death does impact the story heavily. Especially still going forward, Bumblebee's death has still impacted characters like Prime and Cliffjumper. And it is sad that he did have to go, but hey, at least he got to show up, and I'm sure they'll eventually give us flashbacks with him in Prime, although I feel like by now they should have, but maybe by the end of the current volume they'll give us some flashbacks to see him and Prime's relationship along with the other bots. Now, the final characters I'll talk about are just characters that show up in the background or just one scene. Most of them consist of the offline Autobots aboard the Ark, which we see quite a few of. We see most of them are hard to tell, but we do see some characters that are clear, like Ironhide, Prowl, Sideswipe possibly, and Brawn. We also see what might be Windcharger in the background, and then we see, and there's also this green guy that we see the parts of. I'm not quite sure who it is. I would say Hound, but well, spoilers, but Hound is in the comic, kind of, but he's not with the Ark crew, or at the very least, he was not aboard the Ark when it Jetfire came. So who knows who he is, this green guy. Then we have 5 more characters, like bots that show up in the background in flashbacks, such as Beachcomber, which he is in the, well, you'll see about him later. Then we also see a guy next to him that kind of looks like a blur getting shot at. I'm not really quite sure. Then another scene, we see Blaster in the background, as well as Red Alert, from what it seems. At least a bot that looks a lot like Red Alert. And the final character we see is Trailbreaker, who was miscolored at the Beachcomber, who was about to get revived, but of course is not going to be online for a bit. Now, obviously, some of these characters will show up later, but as of right now, we're not sure the status on them. And finally, last but certainly not least, is Megatron. Now, Megatron, we don't know where he is right now. All we know is that at the very least, he's in the Arctic. But I didn't include it in the movie, as I said, but if you've seen my 2024 Energon special, then we know the status on him, and that is he is currently online and looking for Starscream. Will we find him? You'll have to wait to see. But yeah, that is the Skybound Volume 1 review. It was pretty good, and also how I feel about the characters also. There wasn't really any characters I disliked. Although I will have some more complaints about characters going into Volume 2, but that's fine. And of course, there will be plenty of new characters that show up. Oh, I can't wait to see some of them. But yeah, see you next time.